Welcome back to the Catnip Podcast. My name is Grace, and today is Friday, June 23rd. I don't know what episode number this is, but it's an episode of this podcast. This is a podcast about knitting and spinning sometimes, and dyeing yarn, and sometimes baking, and cats, and books, and lots of stuff, but mainly knitting because that is what I love to do. You can find all my various social medias down below. There's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Ravelry. There's a podcast Ravelry group. If you go to Ravelry and search and go to the groups tab and click the Catnip Podcast, it'll pop up. I do have an Ask Me Anything thread there if you'd like to ask me any kind of questions. I would love to answer them either in the thread or on the podcast. I also have a place where you can buy some yarn that I've dyed. The link is catnetyarns.bigcartel.com. That will also be linked down below. Everything that I talk about will hopefully be listed in the show notes. If it's not, feel free to contact me and ask questions about why I forgot to put it in the show notes. That'll be on my blog, which will be linked down below if you're on YouTube, or if you're on my blog, they're down below. So, it's been so hot. It's been so hot. I will just say that before we get into things. Because I also talk about the weather a lot. But I do have coffee because coffee is good, and also it's early in the morning, and to prevent sound issues, that's okay. You do what you got to do. I have my wonderful new favorite mug here. I have wonderful coffee that my in-laws brought when they came to visit, and I will talk about that in just a minute because long intros, but that's okay. Anyway, if you'd like to get something tasty to drink, whether it be coffee or water or any kind of hot, cold thing to drink, you can come back and join me for some crafty chat. So I do in fact hear the yard people coming, so thankfully, due to the power of editing, I can fix it. Hopefully you can only barely hear it now. I really should find out what exactly they're doing. I have no idea what they're doing. It sounds like they're either like power washing, or they're weed eating, or mowing. I don't know. But it's just very inconvenient. Anyway, so I will do my best to try and like cut that out as much as possible. I will try and talk when they're being more quiet. As they're being a little bit more quiet right now, which is why I'm talking. So, moving on. Yes, like I said, this week has been very hot. It has not been as hot as it possibly can, but it has been the hottest that it's been since the changing of the seasons, let us just say that. It's also been very humid, so because of the temperature and because of the humidity, my knitting has not been quite as successful as it has been in the past weeks. So I do apologize, this episode might be a little bit shorter than normal, but it's all I got. It's all I got, and that's okay. That is totally okay. They have gone quiet, so we will take this opportunity and talk, because that's always good. Back to podcasting business, or not really business, but just things that are good to be talked about. So, like I mentioned in the intro, my in-laws brought coffee for my husband and I, which may sound kind of like, why? There's something driving by now, and it's like, why? It's a delivery truck. Okay. So, there is a Texas type of grocery store that is, I don't know what the regions are that they're in, so I'm not even going to begin to guess, but they're called H-E-B's, and they are amazing. They're so wonderful. I love them. They didn't have them in Oklahoma where I grew up, but when we moved to Houston and I went to college or College Station, they had them everywhere. And so I got very used to shopping at H-E-B's, and it's like, I love H-E-B's. They don't have them in Dallas, unfortunately, or in the general Fort Worth, Irving area, which is very unfortunate because their coffee is some of the best coffee that you can get, in my opinion. It's some of the best coffee. And I have a little Keurig. I've had this Keurig for forever. It is wonderful, and they do in fact have K-Cups with the H-E-B brand coffee. It is so good. Needless to say, we could not get it in Dallas or Irving or wherever you want to say because there's no H-E-Bs here, so my in-laws very kindly brought us some K-Cups and some like actual coffee beans or coffee grounds, which is so exciting, and I have been like not rationing it, but it's definitely kind of like a fancy little treat because it's just so good and I love it so much. I don't really geek out about coffee that much, so I feel kind of weird doing this because it's just Keurig coffee. It's not like this is fancy ground espresso, which I would feel a little bit more legit gushing about, but this is just Keurig coffee, so I like it. It's good. If you live near an H-E-B, I highly recommend checking out their coffee. It's really good. Do it. Will not regret it. So because of trying to do things quickly before things get too loud, I did not write show notes beforehand, but I do have a box that I keep, and here, let me show it to you. A fun fact about me, so our living room, TV room area is like literally right behind you. We're in the study right now, so fun fact. We're in the study, the next room is our living room, TV room, and there's a couch, and I have my box of projects that sits next to the side of the couch that I sit on. And here is the box. It's nothing fancy, it's literally just like a box that has tape and stickers on it because it was used for something before. And I just pull out whatever I feel like working on. And this also has older projects as well, one of which I worked on this week, so yay me. So because I did not write show notes, I just brought the whole box in here because it's just an easy way to bring everything in. And if I want to talk about something that I didn't necessarily work on, I have it in this box. So yay! So some of the podcasts that I watch on a regular basis, some of the people knit while they record, which like I think is wonderful. I personally wish that I could do that, but I talk too much with my hands to be like just sitting here chatting. I don't know why that is. I feel like it would be a little bit more empty without my moving hands because it's just how I talk. So, fun fact, things I think about the way I podcast. Here they come again. They're making noise. Oh. Okay, they've gone away kind of. They're a little bit more distant. What was I talking about? I don't know. See, this is also very annoying because like they start becoming more loud like they are now, literally as I start talking, and then I forget about what I was talking about. Ooh, the trials. So, power through. They're quiet right now. Okay, so one of the things that I worked on this past week, I did not get a lot of progress, but I did definitely get some progress because that's just the way knitting works. I did show this to you not next week. I will hopefully show it to you next week. Hopefully I'll have worked on it. Why? I tried so hard to be early. So I cast this on last week. And this is a very, very easy, quick, simple knit, which is always good. It does use the brioche stitch or technique, so there is that kind of fancy, but it is the fingering brioche bandana cowl by Lavinia Patricella, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Apologies if I'm not. But she has published many a good pattern, and I definitely want to knit more of hers. But this is what I have so far. It's a little bit longer than you saw before. Maybe like 5 rows. But yes, it's very just simple 2-color brioche. There's this side, and this is what the other side looks like. It's very fun. I really like these kind of patterns because it's like, it's a good way to take a fancy yarn that you may or may not have been holding on to because it's just so fancy and you need something special for it. It really showcases that yarn so well. And so I love that it does that, because then it's like, I have fun yarn and I picked a good pattern and it's showing off the yarn and I love knitting it, and it's just, and I can't wait to wear it, and it's just so many good things. So yes, this is going very well. Like knitting brioche, knitting two-color brioche. If you've knit two-color brioche, you know what I'm going about to say. But that was said incorrectly. You know what I'm about to talk about. You will understand it. Let's just say that. You will understand what I'm about to talk about. When you knit two-color brioche, you essentially have to knit the same row twice because of the way that the colors work and using both yarns at the same time. Again, I'm trying to better understand the ways the brioche works. I still don't 100% completely understand it, but I'm working on it. So, and this is definitely helping me. So, you essentially have to knit the same row twice, so therefore it takes twice as long to knit something. Which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like, it's just a little bit more time consuming. Let's just say that. So when I say that you have to knit the same row twice, before I can make any kind of additional progress, I have to knit one round in the pinky color, and then I have to knit one round in the gray color as well. Let's get my head out of the way so it'll focus. And when I say round, what does that mean? If you're not a knitter and don't know what that means is that it's just literally like if you were to knit one point to one point on straight needles or circular needles, it's like I knit from here all the way around back here again. So I have to do that twice in order to get a row of progress. So yes, this is a wonderful cowl. I'm not knocking it in any way because that is literally just what brioche is. There's no way around it. You just have to do it. Unless you're doing one color brioche, in which case it's a little different. But this is not one color brioche, this is two color brioche. Gotta get that right. Okay, so what are the yarns that I'm using? I'm using one of my own yarns. This is Catnip Yarns on the Pizzazz base, which is 75% superwash merino, 20% nylon, and 5% Selena. So there is sparkle. I don't know if you can see it, but there's sparkle there. And this is the Storm Cloud colorway in tonal grays and I cannot speak today. Flecks of dark charcoal and black. And then this skein that I've been holding on to for forever, and I love knitting with it so much, is a skein of Savvy Skeins on the Lavish Sock base. And the ball band did not have a colorway name, which I know I could probably look that up on her website maybe, but it's just like a peachy coral with flecks of everything, and it's so amazing. I love it. It's so gorgeous. So yeah, this is what they look like together. I love it. I love these colors so much. So much. This just makes me so happy. It's one of those things where it's kind of like I'm knitting stripes and I have a favorite color that I like working with, and so I power through the gray round in order to knit with this because I love knitting with it so much, which is kind of like pushing me on to make progress on it, which I think is kind of funny. So motivation. Get motivation wherever you can. That's okay. So yes, this is the Fingering Brioche Bandana Cowl by Lavinia Patricella, and it is wonderful. And I have a lot more progress of this just like straight circle that I need to do before I can do any kind of like bandana-ing, but that's okay because knitting takes time and it's worth it in the end. So yes. So another thing that I have been working on this week, and I have not gotten as much progress on it as I would like because one, the rows are very long and they're just gonna get longer. So there's that. And 2, the ball of yarn that I was working with got so tangled. It was just so frustrating, and I couldn't like pull my yarn, and like in order to work with it, it was just getting tangled, and it was frustrating, and it was like, it was also hot, and I didn't want to like spend time to untangle it, so I was like, I'm just not gonna work on it. I did though. I did work on it a little bit until the yarn got too tangled to work with, and then I finally bit the bullet and untangled the yarn and finished the ball consequently. So there's that. That was good progress. So I will show you my progress now. You might remember me talking about this. This is a new project of several weeks. This is crocheting, which is another thing that I'm working on doing. But it's literally just this one thing. So my crocheting ability is not really that much, but I do enjoy working on this. This is the corner to corner pattern technique, whatever you want to call it. I don't know exactly what that would be. So the crocheters out there, is that a pattern, or is that a technique, or is that like a stitch that you do? Because I don't know. So I mean, it's kind of like a pattern, but it's also like a stitch or a technique. I don't know. Maybe you can help me with that one. Anyway, so it's going to be a blanket. I started here and I increased on both sides and I just kept on going. As you can see, the rows are very long now, and they're just going to continue to get longer. So that's okay. And I still have a lot to go before I can stop like increasing on one side in order to get the blanket shape, unless I just make a big square, which that would be a massive big square. So I do have this little like progress keeper to show you how much I've done this week, which is relatively embarrassing, but that's okay because that's why we have them, so we can show our progress. That's why they're called progress keepers. So this guy right here is where I was last week, and this is how much I've done, which is not very much, but that's okay. I explained the yarn was tangled, it was hot, the rows are very long, so hopefully this coming week I will make more progress. I'm going to move that little marker, so hopefully next week we can see how much progress I've gotten done. Last week I mentioned that I'm doing that because I need to like work on it every day, otherwise it's gonna start languishing after a while, so I'm hoping to have this progress keeper as like a motivation or something, to be like, you have to show your viewers, you have to show the people how much you've done, so you need to like have some progress. Let's make some more rows. So motivation to get this done. Do what you gotta do. Yes. That is not to say that I'm not enjoying this by any means, because I am loving it so much, because I just really like this yarn. I will say I'm getting kind of a little tired of the color, but that's only to be expected because there's just so much of it. I do love the idea of this yarn though. I've looked on their website, or various like websites that sell this yarn, which is, I should mention what the yarn is. It is Marble Chunky. They have a lot of different colors, a lot of different like schemes and color schemes, I guess, that I really like, and so I would definitely, depending on how this blanket turns out, which I don't see why it wouldn't turn out fine, I could definitely see myself making another one of these in a different color scheme, because yes. Yes. That is going very well. I finished the first ball. Go me. We're gonna start the second ball. It's gonna be great. Gonna get progress done. Yes. So I think the last thing that I worked on this week is a very old project, but it is not, I will take, but it is not old enough that I have never like showed it on the podcast, because I definitely have. I showed it to you guys when I started it because I got the yarn when I was doing the podcast, so it's really not that old, but it's also kind of old because the 1-year Podiverse series coming up in a couple months, so it's kind of old, but also not kind of old. It's not old, we'll just pretend that it's not old. I will show it to you now. You're probably wondering what it is, because there's probably several projects like that, but that's okay. Okay, so what is this? It is a clapotis or a clapotis, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I've heard both ways. It's okay, I don't care. I'll say it both ways. Clapotis, clapotis. I think, yes. I started off saying clapotis, but I heard then was told that it was clapotis, but then I kept hearing clapotis, so I don't know. It is just a, what am I trying to say about this? First off, if you, like, it was one of those things that took the knitting world on the internet by storm. Everyone was knitting them. This is my second one. I knit one when it, like, came out. Like, not when it came out necessarily, but, like, very shortly after it came out. I knitted out of Malabrigo, and it was so amazing. It felt like butter. It was so amazing. And then it kind of over time slowly started to felt. I think I still have it somewhere, so I don't know. I hear them getting louder. I don't know. Anyway, let's just move forward. So yes, I am currently working on the straight rows, I believe, which is where I'm not increasing or decreasing on either side. I am making the stitches constant, but I am, like, I guess I am increasing and decreasing, but I'm doing it in such a way that there's no stitch increase. And this is knit on an angle, so this is like the bottom, this is what the bottom looks like, and I'm just like knitting it that way. So it looks kind of funny, but this is what it looks like so far. And I'm going to continue knitting, so I will continue dropping stitches and getting these lines. This is so satisfying. I love unraveling these stitches. I will say the yarn does make it a little challenging, but not as challenging as the Malabrigo that I knitted out of the first time, that's for sure. I know my yarn better now, so I can do it more easily. It's just very satisfying. I want to, like, save the stitches as I drop them, so then at one point I can, like, unravel 5 of them and it'll be just like, ah, this feels so good. But I just can't, I can't wait. I love unraveling these stitches so much, so I do them as I go. But that's okay. There's not very many stitches. It's a very quick knit. I did one whole repeat within, like, maybe 20-30 minutes or something like that, so it goes very quickly. I'm using Noro. This is a very small ball. This is what the ball, oh, it's not that small, but it is, let's see, what is this? This is a new to me base when I got it. Curiopatora, whatever that is. I will show that there. Focus. There we go. Curiopatora. Also be linked in the show notes. This is color 1004, lot A. Like any kind of Noro. As you can see, I have a nice little selection of Noro right here. There's more of it. It's just hidden. But I do love my Noro. Goodness gracious, I love Noro so much. I love making this. I do at some point want to make a clapotis out of Curion sock. It's basically like the sock version of this, or one of their different bases, but it's basically the sock version in different colors because that's just awesome. It's going very well. Stash Dash for sure. All about that Stash Dash. It was very nice because when I started working on it yesterday, I got to work on, like, my favorite color section of it, which is like this teal blue. I don't know how well you can see that on the camera. It's not showing up as well as it is in person, but which was very enjoyable. It was kind of like, welcome back to knitting the clapotis or the clapotis. You get to knit with your favorite color now. That's exciting. So that worked out very well, and I'm enjoying knitting it, and I'll continue knitting it. I will say, you'll probably remember, I've knit other things on these needles, but this is the squeaky pair of needles that I have. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's very squeaky. I don't know how I could fix that. This one's not as squeaky. This one's a lot looser though. That is concerning. This one's much tighter. I don't know what the problem is. They're just squeaky. It's not like the worst thing in the world, but after a while it does get kind of annoying. So yes, that is just something to take into consideration. I do enjoy a good Noro project. Probably not sweaters anymore, but definitely hats. Definitely wraps, like clapotis. Just so good. So, knitting wise, I don't have anything more to talk about, unfortunately. Like I said, it was very hot and I just didn't get as much done this past week. Hopefully I'll get more done this coming week. But that's okay, you know, I did get stuff done, so that is good. I made progress on everything. But since there's still just not a whole lot of content, I will let you know what knitting podcasts I like to watch while I am knitting. There are several of them. There's some that are new to me that I'm just like starting to watch, which is very exciting. And there's just some that I love and I've watched for, I don't even know how long. I might have watched for 5 or 6 years. It's just, maybe not 5 or 6 years. I don't know. I watched some podcasts for a very, very long time, and I always go back. They stay the same. They are still the same podcasts that will like never fail to make you smile or laugh or just like be inspired by knitting. So I love knitting podcasts, which is why I was inspired to make my own. So hopefully this podcast will, hopefully it inspires you to make things, and maybe it inspired you to make your own podcast. That would be very wonderful. That would be very incredible. Never thought that I would be able to do that, but cool beans. More power to you. If you're thinking about starting a knitting podcast, it's really okay. Do not worry about it. It's very easy. I do realize that it is very daunting. I do remember what it was like when I first started. It's okay. You make mistakes. You move forward. You learn. And there you are. And then in the end, you have you make friends. You have a wonderful community. You can document your knitting. It's encouragement to make progress on your knitting, which is also very important. I have found that it has increased my motivation to make progress on things. So, yes. If you're thinking about making a knitting podcast, whether it's video or audio, I highly recommend it. It is very wonderful. Very, very, very wonderful. So, what are the podcasts that I enjoy watching? All their links will be in the show notes, so if I forget to mention any of them that I enjoy listening to or watching, I will include them in the show notes. But, so first off, the very first knitting podcast that my mom and I started watching way back in, I don't know what year, but a very long time ago, is the Knit Girls. Laura and Leslie are probably, they're up there with like the Knitmore Girls and all the various like seasoned knitting podcasters. They have started their own knitting retreat, SSK, which is getting ready to happen in Nashville, and I'd love to be able to go someday. That would be amazing. So they have an amazing podcast that has gone on for a very long time, and I still enjoy watching their podcast. They've gone through a lot of changes. They started off like living together in the same town, then Leslie moved away, very, very far away, so they did it like online together at the same time. Then they moved back together, or Leslie moved back, and now they're back together. And so it's just been like, it's cool to see all the progress and like see everything change. But it's still one of those podcasts where it's very good and you will always enjoy it. The Knit Girls, Laura and Leslie. Number 2 is the Stranded podcast by Amy of Stranded Dye Works. I have a fair amount of her yarn, or I have a couple skeins of her yarn and some of her sock blanks as well. I started watching Amy when she first started her podcast, and so it's very cool to see how her podcast has changed and just like how the background has changed, how she's upgraded everything. She does an amazing job. I always love watching her podcast. I always laugh. I am always inspired by her knitting. It is truly wonderful. Plus she knits really fun things. She lives in Sussex over in England, and so as an American, I love listening to accents, and so it is also a great joy to listen to an accent for a while. But that's just me. Another podcast that my mom and I started watching in addition to the Knit Girls, and we have watched ever since then, is The Fat Squirrel Speaks with Amy Beth, and she does the Fat Squirrel bags. I think that's what her bags are called. Anyway, her bags are very, very wonderful. I have actually gifted my mom some of her bags for various like a birthday and Mother's Day, and they're just so wonderful. They're very sturdy, they're very durable. I love her bags. But I love her podcast even more because I can't explain how much I love her podcast. It just makes me smile, it makes me laugh no matter what. Just the way that she talks and the way that she is just very like uplifting, and it's like, I like this. I enjoy listening to this. I enjoy watching this. She's a wonderful knitter. She's a wonderful spinner. She's really smart. She does a bunch of bread making, which is really cool. And then she also has a segment called Shenanigans where she will talk about literally anything that has happened in the past week, or past 2 weeks, or however often she podcasts. And it's just so funny. She's always laughing at herself, and it's one of those contagious laughters that is like, I just can't help but laugh because it's just so funny. But yeah, her podcast is just one of the ones that I will watch no matter what. If there's one uploaded on YouTube or whatever, wherever I watch it, it's like either watching that now because I want to like enjoy it, or I'm gonna save it for later till like when I really, really want to enjoy it and I can like set myself up for a good like podcast watching time, and I'm all like decked out with my drinks and my teas and the podcasts are all lined up and it's all good. Hers is without a doubt one of my favorites for sure. Another one that I have started watching recently, and I've been watching for the past couple of months, and it's definitely one that is very popular. It has become, I watched a couple of her episodes when she was just starting off, and I did not continue watching them for whatever reason. I think I forgot to subscribe to her YouTube channel, so I completely forgot about it, which was terrible of me. But I refound her. I heard other people talking about her, so I was like, I remember. Let's go check her out again. I love her podcast. It is Inside Number 23 with Katie. She is very wonderful. She is, again, a very wonderful knitter. She's very inspirational with the things that she knits. She's also a big sewer, which is very fun, and I am not a sewer necessarily. I don't know how to sew very well, but that's okay. But I do enjoy seeing the things that she sews because she goes into great detail about like the fabric and the patterns and all that kind of stuff. It's very enjoyable whether or not you sew or whether or not you knit. It's very enjoyable. She's very nice. It's a very well put together podcast. And I don't remember where exactly she lives in England, but she does live in England. So again, as an American, it's another accent that I just really like listening to. So it's just very soothing. I love British accents. So yes, Inside Number 23 with Katie. So a new to me podcast, which I've been greatly enjoying, is Knitting a Love Song with Kirsten. It is very wonderful. She always has so many works in progress, which I really appreciate. it's really fun to see if someone's been working on a lot of things, because I don't do that sometimes, and then I don't have any content. But she always has a lot of content, which I really appreciate in a podcast. She's also a really wonderful knitter, and it's very inspirational. She's currently working on an exploration station, which I have made one of those, but I really want to make another one, and it's kind of making me want to cast one on. I know in past episodes she's also working on a Madewell sweater by Joji Locatelli, which is like this beautiful cardigan with like elbow patches, and hers is like this really pretty gray, and it makes me want to make one so bad. And she also has a online yarn store. I think it's also called Knitting a Love Song as well, and her yarns are so beautiful. There's lots of beautiful tonals, some other variegated yarns. It's awesome. I highly recommend going and checking that out, and just checking her general podcast out, because it's awesome. I'm definitely going to continue watching it for sure. It's always fun to like have those new to me podcasts that you start watching and then you realize that there's other episodes you can watch, so then you can go backwards and you can watch from the beginning, and then you're all caught up, and then you feel like you're part of the club, and it's like, I'm so cool. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But sometimes I feel that way when I find a new podcast that I really particularly enjoy. So, yeah. Knitting a Love Song with Kirsten. Another cool thing about the Knitting a Love Song podcast is that she lives in New Orleans in Louisiana, so she's basically like a neighbor, because Louisiana and Texas are like right next to each other. So that's also very cool. It's very nice to see kind of local podcasters around you, so that's also fun. Another podcast that I really enjoy is the Hey Sister podcast. They don't upload as often as like a regular weekly podcast or bi-weekly or whatever. Their most recent episode, which just went up a couple days ago, and their episode before that, there was a long period of time. But that's okay, because their episodes are just so enjoyable. They're very long usually, because they have so much to talk about. They're two sisters, Tabby and Rachel, and they're just so adorable. They knit amazingly. I think Rachel is a beginning knitter, which is incredible, because I was never that close to being that good when I first started knitting, so it's really fun to see like her beginning knitting skills and like how amazing she's doing, like cabling and socks, and it's like, goodness gracious, I could never do that as a beginner, so more power to ya. They also sew. They've started their own hand-dyed yarn company. They're awesome. I highly recommend their episodes if you want a longer podcast, for sure. For sure. The Hey Sister podcast with Rachel and Tabby. Another podcast that I do enjoy, I don't always watch every single episode when it gets uploaded, but I have enjoyed her podcast, the episodes that I have seen. It is the Corner of Craft. I guess it's the Crafty podcast with Hannah. She is hilarious. I love just listening to her talk and seeing the things that she's knitting. Her color choices are so wonderful. There's like a lot of purples and like pinks, like light pinks, and like a lot of purples. I love purple so much. Also, at one point her hair was purple, so that was also very cool. She has an Etsy shop where she has like these little beaded progress keepers or stitch markers, and they are so cute. I love them. They are incredible to see on her Instagram. They make me want to start beading, but I know that I would be terrible at it, so I'm just gonna leave her to do the beading. But it's just really fun to see her little stitch markers, and then also watch her podcast. She currently lives in Frankfurt? No. She lives somewhere in Germany. I don't remember where exactly in Germany, but she currently lives in Germany, and she's going to be moving back to somewhere in England in July, I think. So coming up, she won't be living in Germany anymore, but so yes, again, accents, British accent, love it so much, so much. So that's the Crafty podcast with Hannah. So another podcast that I really enjoy and I usually watch/listen to while I write the show notes and kind of edit my own podcast, because it gets put up on either Thursday or Friday, and so it's just the right time for me to have something to listen to while I edit my own, is the Yarngasm podcast with Kristen. She is a wonderful knitter. She also has a very successful yarn dyeing company, Volanvine. All of her colors are amazing. They're beautiful. I love her yarn. I have one skein of her yarn that I got like way back when she wasn't as popular as she is now, and so it was so much easier to get it then, and now it's much harder, unfortunately, but that's okay because I'm glad that she's doing well. But I really enjoy her podcast. She lives in Brooklyn, which is very cool. And she has a cat. That's always good. I enjoy that. Her cat, Bella, makes an appearance quite regularly, which is fun. Her knitting is amazing. She's such a talented knitter, and her color choices are always very fun. She's been knitting a lot of really fun shawls, fun Stephen West shawls recently, which just makes me want to knit all the fun Stephen West shawls as well, particularly the eyeball shawl and also the excuse me shawl. Want to make those so badly, but there's too much knitting, not enough time, and all the inspirations, so. But I won't say no to inspiration, because who doesn't love having inspirations? So yes, I enjoy watching her podcast. She's also a sewer, so she does, no pun intended, so she does have a sewing segment as well, which doesn't necessarily like interest me, but it is very enjoyable. She's very informative about her sewing, so if you're interested in that, highly recommend watching that. So yes, the Yarngasm podcast with Kristen. Yes, I think that is it for the podcasts that I watch. I think there are a couple others that are escaping me at the moment. I will have to take a look at my YouTube list to see if I missed anybody, but those are the ones that I watch on a regular basis. So those are the ones that I always go to. I always check to see if they have an episode whenever I want to sit and get some knitting done, which I'll probably be doing this weekend, so I'm looking forward to that. I have a little stash of podcasts saved up. Oh, I remember! Another one that I really enjoy is the Wet Coast Bulls podcast. I think it's Glenda and Bernadette. And they live in Vancouver, I think. They have a yarn... Glenda has her own yarn shop, and so they podcast in the yarn shop, so that's very cool. But I really enjoy listening to them. They do very good knitting. It's very inspirational. They knit all the sweaters. Oh my goodness, they knit so many sweaters, and they're the woolly kind. There's also like the Fair Isle kind, and it's like I just want to knit all the sweaters, but I can't because I live in Texas and it's just too hot. But that's okay. That's okay. I will live vicariously through the people who can knit bulky sweaters all the time. I will enjoy it through them. So that is another reason why we have knitting podcasts. So we can enjoy the joy of knitting things that we can actually knit because of the climate of the place that we live in. So yes, the Wet Coast Wool podcast with Bernadette and Glenda. They're very wonderful. Highly recommend them. So yes, I think that is the last podcast that I watch on a regular basis. If not, I will definitely be linking it in the show notes. Do not worry. If you have any other podcasts that you watch religiously, let me know, because I'm always down to find new podcasts. So yes, I'm always very excited to give new podcasts a try. If you have anyone that you really particularly enjoy, let me know. I'd love to hear about them. Or if you have your own podcast, do let me know as well. I'd love to check your podcast out because yay for podcasters supporting other podcasters. That is always good. So my camera is telling me that I have about an hour of footage, but I don't know how much will actually be in the podcast because of sound problems that were caused by the apartment complex. So hopefully there will be enough content to make a decent podcast episode. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? We will see in editing, because that is a thing that always happens. I think that is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for checking me out. If you are a new viewer, I really appreciate it. If you'd like to go introduce yourself in the Ravelry group, that would be wonderful. There are some people who have introduced yourselves. I really appreciate it, and I will reply to you soon. I am sorry. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for sticking with me and coming back each week. I really appreciate it. I know I ramble a lot, so I appreciate you putting up with my rambling. You can find all my various social medias. They'll be linked down below. Either way, if you're on my blog or if you're on YouTube, they'll be linked down below. There's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Ravelry. Instagram is much more frequently used, so if you want to pick one social media to follow me on, I highly recommend Instagram. I post there pretty regularly. So yes. Also last week I mentioned Goodreads. I have that. I'll link that in the show notes again this week if you'd like to see what I'm reading. If you'd like to hear me rant about books, there's last week's episode that you can go watch. That's fun. And yeah, I hope that you've had a wonderful week. I hope that you continue to have a wonderful week and a wonderful weekend. I hope that your crafty plans are successful. I have a lot of crafty plans because I'd like to have more knitting progress done for next week's episode. And this is perfect timing because as I'm closing the podcast, the people come back to make more noise. So we're gonna finish this quickly. Yes, so if you'd like to go introduce yourself in the podcast group on Ravelry, you can go to Ravelry, click on the groups tab, and search the Cat Knit Podcast. It should pop up. There's an Ask Me Anything thread, so if you'd like to ask me anything about myself, or knitting, or dyeing yarn, or spinning, or cats, or books, or whatever. I think last week I mentioned living in Texas, which I'll do my best to answer if you would like to know a little bit more about Texas. No promises, though, because it's Texas. I'm not from Texas originally, so I don't know every little bit of detail about Texas, but that would be funny. So if you want to know about Texas, let me know. There's also a online store where you can buy some yarn that I've dyed myself. It is thecatknityarns.bigcartel.com. That'll be linked down below in addition to the Ravelry group link. And yes, I think that is all I have to say this week. Again, thank you for checking me out and spending some time with me, listening to me ramble on about knitting and podcasts and such. So I guess that is it for the information that I need to tell you. If you have any more questions, or if I don't leave something in, or I forget to put something in the show notes or wherever, feel free to contact me. Feel free to ask. I am so down with that. Happy to help. And yes, I guess I'll see you guys next week. Bye!